Thanks for joining early. Or I guess right on time. Thanks for giving me a couple extra seconds to get started here. We're streaming on supposedly on YouTube and Twitch, and we'll see if I don't know what LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook are doing, but I'm not going to be able to kind of watch all those. So, but if something does go down, you can try to make sure that at least the YouTube one's working. We'll get started in a minute here. Okay, let's switch over here and bring in Gary. Gary, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. That 20-second latency was you turning on the mic, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm like, oh no, latency everywhere.
No, I had it muted. I did switch screens.
Well, that's great. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this first live stream. Not even sure how to monitor if anyone's even in the chat very well at this point. But as we go along, I'll figure this stuff out more and more. But it'll be recorded for everyone's posterity here. So wanted to first just kick off the idea that, Locate Press, we've been doing a lot of open source GIS related work for a while, and wanted to highlight some of the accomplishments and some of the authors and some of the different things that we have going on in the industry. And I thought one way to do it is I send out tweets, fairly regularly, I guess. I try to do LinkedIn posts, and then I have mailing lists, but that's all pretty static stuff and really not so easy for everyone to interact with in a more meaningful way. So we're going to try out doing this live stream, see how it goes, see if there's interest in other ones, and I look forward to your feedbacks and comments. But in today's show, I've got Gary here, and we'll talk about all things around what got him into open source in the first place. I'll try to drop some surprise questions for him. But a real quick overview. I don't want this to be specifically about Locate Press talking about itself. So what I wanted to, I'll give a quick overview though for those of you that are new to it. Open source software for geospatial and GIS applications is quite mature. The company, locatepress.com, produces and sells books, ebooks in the form of PDFs and physical print books through Amazon and a few other distributors. And they specifically focus on topics related to open source. The idea that there would even be a interest in books around open source is really kind of probably the main topic for today. Like the fact that anyone even cares about or would care about having books was an open question even 10 years ago. Wasn't necessarily a done deal, or wasn't an obvious solution. Although to some of us, we had some insight into that growing kind of market. So you'll see you'll see Locate Press at doing event sponsorships in areas that we really are interested in. QGIS user group meetings, the Phosphor-G event that OSGeo puts on, and local chapter groups around the world. So if you have an event going on and you need some sponsorship, we're happy to help where we can on those opportunities. Usually we're just looking for a place to put some books on a table and talk about them, or have an author do a talk or something like that. So that's who we are. Our goal as a company, I'll go over it maybe in a minute here. Let me just pull up the other background slide this is I've put together a slide deck. Gary hasn't, I don't think Gary's seen this yet. Let me just see. Yeah, there we go. So this kind of touches on some key points for us to dive off into. But really, we saw that there was a gap in the mainstream publishing experience, and we'll talk about those experiences. Both Gary and I published books with major publishers. Gary with Pragmatic Programmers, and I with O'Reilly. After those experiences, we realized there was an opportunity for delivering education on these topics, or that there was a need for education on these topics. So in 2011, I started Locate Press and looked at a couple different book options, but we ended up really focusing on Gary's, republishing Gary's out of print book. Although, Gary, it's not really just a word for word, republishing. It was a retelling of a lot of the tech at the time.
Yeah, it was
So-
an update.
So that came out as Geospatial Desktop, and that was the first book that Locate Press published. I launched the company in 2011. Gary and I worked on that first book for a year or so, and we launched that book in 2012. And then I ran ahead for the hills, and Gary took over the company while I had to go get a real job. So for the next 8 years, Gary ran that company, and only in the last year and a half have I kind of come back to let him retire and take it over. So while I pull Gary in, because he's gracious to help me with these things, don't blame him for anything that comes out nowadays. But he's still.
I hate to interrupt, but it looks like the YouTube is not working. I just
Okay.
there's something in the chat. Folks are confirming it's not working. I gave a Twitch link. But
Oh, okay.
not sure what's going on there.
All right. Yeah, because there's really easy ways to test this stuff. Jeez. All right. Hold on
It
one
is
second.
working on Twitch, but
Oh, good. Well, we'll see what it does. Otherwise, I have a recording of it, and I'll be able to save that. Yeah, auto start. It says it's streaming, right? But then it's not. It is showing updated content in the stream on YouTube.
is it set to private? I don't think about it. I don't know much.
Well, the challenge is you get these desktop studio apps, and then they go and launch it for you in YouTube. So it's like, is it just sitting there waiting? It might be actually that there is a different video link on the if the channel might list that there's actually is a live thing, and you can go and see it. But maybe the upcoming one that I planned, that is the link that I promoted everywhere. Oh no, it is unlisted. All right, let's try that out now. So that should be a little more public now that it literally says public.
Oh, look, there's something.
But it's really confusing. Well, let's let me just double check. That's kind of weird because it was showing that there was updates going on. Well, I at least have some copies here, so that's one reason why we did the multiple streams. So hopefully, I guess you were seeing some people in the comments, were you?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a different link or not.
Yeah, so there was a scheduled live stream, and I think maybe it created a new URL for a new live stream. It says it's live now, and it's public, and it's streaming. So let's continue on maybe, and then I won't have to edit the resulting video too much. Thanks. Yeah, I can't. I got to make the chat window bigger on my screen. Oh yes, the spam bots end up coming pretty fast apparently when you're on Twitch. Okay, so that's the background on the company in general. I can go into my background. Gary will go into his background a bit, and we'll talk through more stuff as I get reoriented after that. We really some of the actually, like, maybe we can go back, Gary, and we can just talk a bit about your publishing experience, because I'm pretty sure you published your Desktop GIS book was published before I had a book out, right? I think.
No, I think yours was first.
Oh, okay. I just need to hear you say that, I guess. I think mine came out in 2005, 2005-ish. I think maybe ours came out the same year, for that matter. Just for those that are joining a little late, I guess you're in this live stream, so I can't talk to the people who aren't in this live stream. But we are rebroadcasting this to Twitch and every other place I could possibly turn on, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So I don't know how those ones are faring, because I'm not going to check on all 5 during the call. But if you have issues, you switch over to the other ones and catch up on those. Or maybe even drop the note like that in the chat if you're talking to people who are confused. How did you get connected with pragmatic programmers in the first place and convince them that this was even a topic that you should write about? Like, I see Desktop GIS in the main title, and then kind of open source kind of down the bottom and stuff. Did you have to convince them that there was like mass market appeal for this, or were they already a niche publisher?
I'd used a number of their books, their programming books, and so they have a thing on their website that says "Write for us." So I looked at it and decided to pitch a book to them. And you had to give a description of potential audience. So I made a case for the fact that there's a lot of open source GIS software out there that had little or no coverage in books, and so that's how we got started with that.
Is that who is their kind of core audience then? It's all developers.
In large part, they publish a lot of programming books on languages and also process books on agile programming and just kind of cover the whole gamut of development from the philosophical side even to the pragmatic, pun intended side of things.
Okay. You'd mentioned before too that you had a concept of we should give the background, I guess. This was still long after you had started QGIS, correct? Like, how long did it go from writing software to writing a book about writing a book that included the software? That's a weird question, I know.
I believe it's probably about 8 or 9 years after I started QGIS. So it was a while. I was more interested in writing software than books at the time.
Imagine that. Sorry, everybody, I got a bit of a flu this morning. Having a little bit of trouble. So I'll try not to mute or try not to cough in your ears too much. Can you talk a little bit about your experience just in general? And we're coming at this from, so I published a book or wrote a book for O'Reilly around similar time frame, early 2000s. And both of us came away with similar experiences. Both of our books were printed kind of old school style, right? I think yours was too, yeah. But print on demand wasn't really much of a thing at the time. It was an experiment.
Yeah.
And so I know they printed like 5,000 copies and of my book for O'Reilly, and it was a big investment for them and a big gamble for them too. But it's very similar to your experience. You jumped in and you knew the company kind of from the books that I've read before, and but it took less than a couple years before they had sold out of those books, and then they had kind of moved on to other projects, and they weren't ready to print another 5,000 of them, which is was from my understanding anyway. I can't speak for the internals of what they were going through there, but it seemed like they didn't really have an alternative model for printing books. But there was a big push towards digital copies of it, so they were happy to kind of keep it in print through digital purchases. Did your book go out of print as well then?
I did, and they didn't. It didn't sell to the extent that they met their targets for a book, and so there was no reprint of it.
So the interesting thing, and people might not know, is people generally know the copyright for these books goes to the publishing company. I'll switch over and show some of these slides here that I've got. And this slide is about the origins of the company and really kind of the core values, or this is the slide about core values of the company and really the impetus for starting it in the first place. I've got a couple of pictures on the side here showing a couple things I'll talk about in a minute too. But really, Gary and I made it sound pretty easy that, you put a book proposal in, you get accepted, and you write a book. It wasn't that easy for me. There was a lot of back and forth, and it's really a negotiation with the publisher at that point of whether they like your idea or not. And then quite often, at least in my case, they came back and were like, how can we make it more appealing to more people? And so with the Web Mapping Illustrated book, I should have put a screenshot up here for people. It really was written for web developers and for GIS people, so it's kind of half and half. But there was a push to try to make it even more like consumer friendly, like for people who use GPS receivers and stuff like this. And I'm like, no, we can't. It's not going to be a mass market book. But there's all this expertise that's sitting out there in developers and power users and in educators, workshop trainers, all the small consulting companies, etc., that really have expertise that could get unlocked if only it was easier to publish books. So that was one of the core values going into starting Locate Press was, let's get this expertise, in our case, Gary's expertise, and then my expertise in GIS, working together to get this value out. And then the print-on-demand model itself was a new topic at the time, and it's old school almost now. I think everybody does it. So the idea that print on demand actually is they print one copy of the book, package up, and ship it. Now for traditional printing, that's untenable because especially if they do color printing with an offset printer, you have to create plates for all this stuff. Like the setup costs are ginormous for it. But now with digital printing,
that was one of the problems with my book and doing a reprint is that it was all done in color, which that was the first book they had ever done in color. They had to find somebody to print it, and it came literally from on the slow boat from China, printed in color over there with a horrible material for cover, and so there was no print-on-demand color, at least not that they were using or were aware of at the time. So that was cost prohibitive, I guess, in that regard.
Interesting. Yeah, it's the exact same experience. The slow boat thing for 2 months. I had to wait while my books were floating in the ocean somewhere. I just want to do a quick mic check here. I see Nick and Ian are in the chat. Thanks, Yeah, I was gonna say someone said there's a massive echo in the. When is it only when Gary's speaking, Nick? Let me just double check. I don't hear the echo on my end. So, Gary, you don't have the YouTube audio playing, right?
I have everything muted, I believe.
Okay. My audio is there. I don't really have more settings here for. Yeah, and just to be clear, it's not Gary's setup that's an issue. It's probably my settings on my end, so it's kind of annoying. Oh.
Oh.
Let me just check something here.
I can close all
Here,
my.
Gary, say something now and see if it.
Hello, test 1, 2, 3. Am I echoing?
Is that any better? Let me just double check. I got a monitor turned on. I think that maybe it's picking it up because it was too close to the microphone. But one second
here. Is the echo still there? Waiting for a comment on YouTube. Ian says that's better.
Yeah. It's a confusing thing, I think, because maybe my microphone is a little too is picking it up a little too easily here. 1 second.
There's also a lag, so we need to see that it was better for a bit after you did something. So I think they said it's better now.
Oh, right, the lag. Yeah, you guys are about 20 seconds, I think, behind us. So we'll just let that run for a minute, and then we'll see. It's back, yeah. So, but when I turned it off,
now there's echo again.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to do it without monitoring.
I'll just be quiet. How's that?
Yeah, I think, if you just don't talk, it'll sound
okay.
just fine.
I'll use write notes and hold up pictures or something.
Yeah. Let me just check something here. See if this works better. This is one of the reasons I wanted to do a live stream. Make sure I got the software working the way I want.
This was promoted as a beta stream, right?
Yes, beta, alpha, beta, alpha, delta. I have to turn this off. And then try to turn this back on. And then try to turn this back on. Okay. Well, let's continue on, Gary. I think, they need a chance to see if it works or not. Okay. They need a chance to see if it works or not. They need a chance to see if it works or not. Oh, no, I'm hearing it 3 times myself, so.
Ian says that's better again.
So you don't have any audio playing anywhere except through your earbuds, right? Any audio playing
That's right. There's nothing coming over my computer speaker. That's right. There's nothing coming over my computer speaker.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've got way too many things going on this end. One sec. I've got way too many things going on this end. One sec. I've got way too many things going on. Default. Oh. That should be off. There we go. Yeah, it will be a lot worse for a minute. Hey, we got 6 viewers. I'm pretty excited there. It's pretty nice. Thanks for dropping in. We're just trying to figure out some couple different issues that we're having with audio. Muted there. Okay, that's one less audio source playing in the background here. And I can hear you fine, and I don't hear echoes. You know what it was, I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. The let's continue on, and we'll see if it settled itself down now that I've flipped some more switches. The and I'm taking notes for taking notes for the future here. In a nutshell, I think that actually this headset here was using the microphone at the same time as my desktop microphone. Okay, so we were talking about the idea of print on demand, and print on demand, for those that didn't know, was packaging a single book, and it wasn't really possible before digital printing came out. So obviously we're using large scale laser printers and stuff like that, and offices had been around for a while and kind of morphed as the photocopiers grew and all these things. Now you basically can go buy pretty much a printing press that's almost the size of a few office photocopiers. People are half the audience is like, "What's a photocopier?" But like the really really large units, and if they're printing on a 8.5 by 11 paper, the quality and the output process isn't much more complicated than printing on a large laser printer. So that capability, though, for these large digital presses is they can pump out a lot of material very much faster than anything you've seen before. And then you have to print a color cover and crop it and glue it on and all these things. But so by moving to print on demand, we knew that we would be able to also take advantage of changes in books, and basically you could just update the file one day and all of a sudden those errors in your book are fixed the next day. And the traditional printing model just can't absorb that kind of dynamic need that the market really has. Ian, Nick, how are things sounding any better at all? Still really bad. Everyone's really quiet. They're like, "Man, this is driving me nuts. I'm out of here."
I closed out everything on my computer except the thing that you and I are. Our images are coming through, so there's nothing running on my computer anymore to interfere.
Oh, okay, great. I mean, I assume the audio is coming through, unless they're all like, "Oh, it's there's no audio. That's better." Let me just double check real quick. It is better. Okay. Oh, it's interesting that the Twitch latency is actually only a couple seconds at most. Okay, I better close that. Thanks, Russ. I appreciate you chiming in on that. Yeah, so everything sounds good. We'll just continue forward. I know what the issue is now, so it's embarrassingly simple, unfortunately. So print on demand. Did your first book? Did they end up printing it on demand for you as well?
No. You mean Pragmatic?
Yeah, the Pragmatic book.
No, it was printed in China on
that was
some sort of.
I mean,
color
afterwards, press. O'Reilly ended up using my book as the first print-on-demand color book that they produced. So it was like, do you want us to experiment? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. It's out of print. It'd be better if you got it back in print somehow. So I don't know how much of that they do nowadays. I should go and do some more research to understand how much is their print-on-demand. But for those listening, this might be way too much inside baseball for you. I apologize, but it's an interesting part of the story because there's several things converging. Open source GIS software growing, people looking at their colleagues going, oh, why don't you use this product? And they go, what's that? I didn't hear about that at the local user group meeting, GIS user group meeting. And at the same time, you have print on demand technology that really finally came into being. And this is early 2000s. And now all of a sudden anyone, like you saw, anyone could become a publisher in a way. The self-publishing industry was really starting to take off at that time. You remember there was CreateSpace on Amazon. There was a few other options as well, where Lulu, I think, and a few other ones where you could upload a book and then sell it or buy a copy. Those were all usually a little more expensive. And even print on demand for us in publishing as a full publisher, we're not self-publisher by any means. It might have felt like that when the first book was Gary's book, but even then I was the publisher, he wasn't. But the publishing capability, really the lowered the bar for people to get into the industry, and that was like, oh wow, that sounds great. Actually, there's a book, and I should have pulled it up. If you're interested in print on demand from a business angle, this is the book that I'll go dig that book up and share it with you, because it basically said, here's the formula for doing it, and here's how you set yourself up as a formal publisher, but a one-person shop. Imagine that. So one of the presumptions that I had was, these other companies are so big that they're not agile enough to really accommodate kind of this change in the market, where we've got way more experts out there that need to get their story out and get their story onto paper. Print on demand. Oh yes, so I'm kind of going through this list here. Print on demand was a big deal, but at the same time, copyright tends to be a little bit important to authors. Now, usually when you write your first book, you're like just happy to get accepted to write a book, and that's kind of the way that the industry has operated for hundreds of years, I would say. Come and beg at our feet and we might let you print a book, might make a book, but you got to make us money too. So we both weren't happy because we couldn't take our content, even though it was out of print, maybe still in digital form. Pragmatic sell digital versions of your book? Gary? They have a PDF version. I assume so at the time. But it would have been nice to get that copyright back. We could have literally lifted the content, updated it, and put it into a new book, and kept on printing desktop GIS open source tools for the world and moved on. But instead, we had to kind of figure out how to rewrite the similar types of content, but not infringe copyright of your own work, which is a mind bender. And then this idea of being equal partners with authors too is a similar concept. Are you begging to get a book in print? Well, we might, oh, hey, the chat is not showing up in this chat box on the screen. Dang it. I'm just going to disable that one then, because that looks like it might only be, turn that one off. Sorry, I'm watching it one chat window in kind of my studio app, and then one chat window by the restreaming company that's restreaming the content. 1 second, please. Um, uh, did you ever talk to the publisher about getting your copyright back?
Uh, they did. They did release it to me, the rights to the book, uh, with the understanding that I would retitle it and remove all references, of course, to their company. And so we did
Okay.
that. We retitled it, and then also went through and did some updates before we published it with Locate Press.
Okay. Yeah. So we're probably a little more transparent than we even probably really needed to be, but that was interesting experience. So what we've tried to apparently I have a chat box on the screen now, but I can't see it filling up with any kind of content. So sign in. Okay. The the idea that you'd be an equal partner with a publisher is kind of funny in the traditional sense, but is no longer you no longer have to be seeing it that way. Being partners with a publisher is really what we were interested in doing as well. Like, I'm not going to go to Gary, hey, let me publish your book and I'll give you $1 a book and I'll keep $10 a book. Thanks, good effort, man. And like, that just seems disingenuous to me. Like, why would I do that to my friend who's been putting content together, or an expert in the field even that I don't know? Like, I wouldn't do that to somebody. And then obviously we want books to be able to kind of support community projects. So and new topics. So I got the Earth Engine book up there on the screen. Just that, the new topics that come and emerge and really come out of maybe nowhere, or they're newer. And our cloud-based stuff, for example, changes so rapidly, right? Traditional print model isn't going to print books in the same way on emerging topics that have emerged and are changing rapidly. And then also I got a screenshot from another video. It's not on my channel. I think this is on the I think it's on Amy's QGIS channel. And it was a good video, meeting with several of us authors and talking about the hydrological applications book. And actually the funding from that, some of the royalties from that book actually go to sponsor a fund that helps bring students to open source events that could otherwise not afford to. So, that's this idea of community support, supporting community projects. We're a QGIS sponsor, and because we can make some money, we want to share that money with the community to help develop the market even more. And I flip back and forth between talking about it as a community and as a market. I can talk way more about the business side and stuff if people ever were interested in how we view that, because it's I don't know, fine line. It's not like it's a mysterious thing, but you cannot just view it as a market. You can't go, oh, this open source community is a market I'm going to sell to. Although that is kind of possible, you run into a lot of issues. People who've been in open source for a while understand what a lot of those issues are. I could dive into those into another episode if you want. But we do want to support community projects. So all that said, as these kind of core values were built from the experience that we had publishing books or being an author, initial authors, we've been able to apply all of these to Locate Press as it's developed over time. So it's over 10 years old now, and we've implemented all of these. 50% royalties sharing, so basically 50-50 sharing of profit with the author. They get the copyright if it goes out of print, and if we're not printing it and we're only doing PDFs, that's pretty much out of print too. And we do it on print on demand model, so we can actually update books fairly rapidly. And we obviously want to develop more and more authors and extract that knowledge and share it with others. One of the some stuff's showing up in chat now, because I guess it needed a new comment before it would show up on the screen. Can't read it because of the colors, but whatever. The when you were how did you convince a publisher that you knew a topic well enough to even write about it? Like, especially when it's something kind of from left field where they don't really know the market or the open source community side. Like I assume they knew open source enough to kind of go, okay, we get that.
Yeah, they knew open source, but all I had to do was show them the QGIS website and that I was the founder of the project, and I figured I had enough knowledge to write about it.
Well, that's a good way to do it.
I guess, I don't know. And, of course, I still had to give them a writing sample and all that stuff to make it. Just because you can write software doesn't mean you can write English or any language.
Right. Well, just so everybody who is watching, the good stuff's going to come in a few minutes here. I've got some other slides that I think you'll find interesting. At least I do from a publisher's perspective. But so Gary and I are just Gary's the founder of QGIS. He's written a couple books now, and then those of you that are in the YouTube chat anyway, you'll see them talking about novels that he's produced as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about how maybe the modern publishing paradigm allowed you to publish more novels? Is that, can I make that leap, or is it something you think?
Well, yeah, they're you hate to admit it, but they're self-published. They're not like a lot of self-published stuff is really bad. It's poorly written from a grammatical standpoint and so forth. But mine have been gone through a number of times and so forth. But yeah, basically, having taken my my experience with Locate Press in getting a book out, I was able to make the leap to self-publish my novels because that was a story I wanted to tell, and if nobody read them, that was fine. But also it allowed me to do it rather than trying to go the traditional publishing route where I would get 3 cents per book and probably be rejected by everybody I sent a letter to. So, and that the books all have 4.3, 4.4 Amazon rating out of 5, so I guess they're okay.
That's interesting. You brought up the royalty stuff, and I probably could talk more about that. For prospective authors in kind of the GIS space anyway. So the Web Mapping Illustrated book, I think retailed for $45, wholesaled for probably $25. I got like 10% royalties. So there, I'm really sharing the inside info now. I got 10% royalties on that. It was great. It worked out fine for me. However, at the end of the day, net a few other costs that they had, it was like $1.50 a book or something like that I got on one that retailed for $45. And that blew my mind when I started kind of getting into looking at the resources that publishers had available. I'll come back to that, but Gary, did you have a similar experience then in how much you were able to earn relative to revenue, retail prices and stuff like that?
Well, Pragmatic did if I remember right, 50-50 royalty split after direct costs. So
wow,
they were better than some publishers, not to mention any names.
I'm wondering if I remember us discussing that early on, because one of the premises I had was this should be a partnership. And we look around and go, who else is doing this? So those in the chat, if you're familiar also with other publishers who do this kind of thing, I'll have to stop saying that we're the best and only one. But others, did take a different approach, and maybe Pragmatics is more in line with what we ended up doing.
And some people, prospective authors, question why only 50%. I do all the work. I wrote the whole thing, and you want half of it. Well, what you don't see is what goes on behind the scenes to get from the text you put in to something that's accepted by a print-on-demand publisher. Not to mention the editing and the copy editing and all the other things that go into it. So there's a lot of work on the editorial side to get a book ready.
Yeah, that's a good observation. And if you're used to like self-publishing, or even like vanity publishing where you just go straight to a printing company and say, make this book for me, you get a lot of back and forth in those kind of custom environments where it's like, oh, well, let's improve your cover, or let's change this size, or Here's a draft copy, but it doesn't look that great. Back and forth. Well, that's anathema, or that's a non-starter to the current printing industry. You need to have everything buttoned up perfect so that they can accept your digital submission and have it work properly on their machines. So that's kind of the stuff people don't see behind the scenes. If a place will be like, I'll make a book, upload your PDF, thanks, and they print it out and you realize something's cut off, you don't have any recourse to really fix this. It's not about that kind of relationship. It's not a consulting relationship. It's more of a upload the file. Does it meet specs? Check. Carry on. And that's what you got to apply your expertise to. Prices have changed a lot in the last 10 years. The costs of printing books has gone up. I could pull together information about how that's changed over the years, but because I was out of the picture for a few years, I don't have a lot of the historical context. But I did recently finish an MBA program, and I spent a lot of that time analyzing Pearson publishers, and realized that costs were definitely going up from paper to ink to fewer players in the market to print stuff. So then the price went up, things like that. But the early on, you realized that a book like Geospatial Desktop didn't cost that much to print compared to the retail prices of typical books. You realize the markup is actually really, really high on these. Now, that's not necessarily the same today as it was 10 years ago. We kind of used to be able to you used to be able to take like a $5 cost for printing a book and then sell it for $10 and you'd be happy. But now it's that same book would cost $9 to print, and you'd have to bump your prices up to make any profit at all.
Especially when you're printing in color and trying to get a decent color, which means you can't go with the base option for color if you really want it to look good. So that increases the cost considerably.
And all our books have been color from day one. So we've always had higher costs than others would have that would try to figure out how we could do this in black and white. But yeah, so that was that experience. I'll just go back to this one slide here and talk through it real quick. I'm not following the 5 talking points outline I gave to Gary, by the way, so I'm totally blindsided him here. But here's what we were able to do in just that 10 years. While Gary was growing the company from 1 title to 10 titles in 10 years, I was off doing other stuff. We pride ourselves in having DRM free PDFs. Some people request Kindle, and there's a little bit more that goes into Kindle than we're really prepared for at the moment. And to be honest, we didn't sell many Kindles when we did do that for a couple books.
No.
You're familiar with Kindle though, aren't you, now with your novels?
Oh yeah, that's the only format that I sell them in at the moment is Kindle. And Kindle's great for text, but as soon as you start trying to put images in, especially maps that you want to be able to read, a Kindle format is reading on a Kindle is an awful way to try to look at it, in my opinion. I mean, it's doable. They're making big color books now with Kindle, but it's another whole stream of work you would have to go through to go to Kindle. It's like you said, it's a matter of whether or not it's cost effective. And I think most people that use Locate Press books want a PDF that they can slap on their screen and whatever their PDF viewer alongside with the work they're doing if they're using it for reference or whatever.
That makes sense. I'm curious, anybody who's listening along or watching the video later, to share how you read your books, how you read your digital books. I'll talk about digital versus print in a second here. But if I don't know, I've bought a few tablets over the years, thinking finally I can it's almost 8.5 by 11 tablet. I can finally put my books on there and read my books and move on. And much of our family actually is we moved everything to Kindle for a while. But for graphic intensive books with maps and code samples and things, it's a little different. I've never really actually come to finding a great digital platform for reading on for these things, except for my computer screen, which again isn't ideal. So I had a computer screen at one point that was a little more of a kind of a vertical format. I thought, oh, this will be great for reading books on. Yeah, as I sit at my desk and stare at the screen, it didn't really work. So holler in chat if you how you read your digital books, and maybe I can learn something from you. Here's the money slide. I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't share this slide, but the this shows way too much information for people. But this is not updated for a few months, so some of the numbers from last year aren't correct yet. But this is a chronology of all the books that were published over the last 10 years by Locate Press. You'll see every year except for 2. We actually produced new books, I should say. And I say we, I mean the company / Gary, because I was not in the picture. But so you'll see some years published multiple books. And some of them have come and gone, like as preview versions or smaller format versions of stuff, of larger works. And we continue to kind of have that model of publishing a preview early so people can get on board and show some support to the author early. And that's not like financial support. They don't make much from those previews until the final version's available. But the most fascinating thing about this is to show that early on we were mainly just doing print. And and you can holler out if you think some of these numbers are wrong, Gary. You're probably like, wait, I know what happened on that year. But they're still phenomenal.
I know we did PDF for a lot of those books.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it just wasn't captured in the administrative side of the software.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like the actual print side here is the real story, though. So the idea that there actually is a market for print books is not surprising to us, not surprising to any of our readers usually, but some publishers, Pearson's one that I was reading their executive statements from their annual reports, and they were talking about how they basically had a plan to go to zero consumer print books for textbooks. And those of you in academia, which I think probably a couple people watching right now are, have probably have your own stories to share about how they didn't sell textbooks, but they rented them, and so the market would be much smaller. But they literally had as a goal of zero print books, which I think doesn't really reflect the market's demand.
I should point out that a number of those books, especially from 2017 on, were actually used as textbooks within institutions, and that's why the print numbers are higher.
Oh yeah, I haven't made all of those academic connections. That's an increasing demand that we're finding with the company, is that we're getting books that are parts of curriculum. So they you get this weird selling dynamic that happens. So September 1st, 20 people buy books, the same book, and you're like, wait, what? And and then they come back and tell you, oh, I bought the wrong one. Sorry, can you refund it and transfer it for me? But that's another matter. Those are great because I wanted to talk a little bit about. I don't have slides for this one. Let me just pull up. We were talking before about the market, the segments of users for using QGIS early on. You sent me a couple images. Can I pull those up?
Yeah.
Those are from your presentation, right?
Yeah.
Or where did these come from? Oh, where?
Those are from the 2007 FOSS4G conference.
Oh, that's the one you were at presenting these numbers? Or?
Actually, another one that shows all the different disciplines that use it.
I think I did
a poll, online poll by discipline, which broke it down even more than what those two things show. And sort of the whole laundry list of people that use it.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because the people that I talk to about adding capabilities and skills to either to their own professional life or to their schooling or to the product they're offering to other people. So like trainers provide a training product. They also follow this dynamic quite well. I don't have the numbers on these breakdowns for all of our print books. It's a little easier to get this kind of information on the digital books because we sold them directly to the customer. But for the print books that are sold like through Amazon, we don't know who the customers actually are. I don't know if people know
those
that,
two slides you just shown are early in the life of QGIS, so that distribution has probably changed by now to some extent.
Well, we've got some QGIS user presidents online, I think, in the chat actually. So ask your questions to them if it's still up to date. But this segment of kind of educational institutions, businesses, or professionals, or home users. See, this is where like GIS professionals kind of blur the line between home and business. So it starts to become a little weird. But if you look at the more detailed slide, you do see like, are you a researcher? Are you government? Are you just using it for home? This is the starting point of recognizing the needs, the different users, different types of users' needs in the, I can say market, but it's really the whole GIS community. I think for open source GIS, this has changed dramatically, and we have way more private companies using it, and probably way more government using it. Actually, I bet all of them have grown, but I suspect like the home user is probably now a professional, and you see things move over time. We've seen the different segments of the community move over time to being, up the stack to supporting more professional use, not just academia and not just like edge cases, niche users, but taking over more and more of the mainstream.
Yeah, the maturing of open source GIS has opened it up to a lot of entities that couldn't otherwise afford to do GIS because of the prohibitive licensing costs in the commercial sector. So we have a lot of NGOs, we have a lot of emerging economies and countries and institutions that are able to actually do GIS now because they can afford it, and the software, whether it be QGIS or GRASS or any of the other open source ones, have matured to the point where you can pretty much do everything you need to do.
That's great. Yeah, and there's a timing to some of this too. So we knew early on that academics needed. Okay, let me back up. Universities that taught GIS usually taught one piece of software. At least I learned one piece of software when I was in school, and I did not have access to that software at home, so I couldn't learn and grow until I got a job at a place that already owned it and had a special Unix workstation and things like that for me to use. And then when I wasn't there, I didn't have access to that kind of technology anymore either, even though I went to another company. They had a different version of that. But I couldn't, we recognized that all this started in school because of the one course I took. So I have a geography degree, and I took one or two GIS courses, but I had to take them through the forestry department at the university because they're the only ones who had GIS. So it kind of shows you like the industry needed the forestry industry where the money was at needed GIS. So the school had GIS. That part of that faculty had GIS. Geographers, geography at the time didn't have GIS, which kind of blew your mind. But what's the money? Follow the money there. But there's a trickle down effect. So when Locate Press came onto the scene, academics went, "Yeah, we know open source is there, and yeah, we feel bad always teaching a single proprietary product to our students in a university level course where you're supposed to teach research skills, not vocational training, for example." And they said, "But we don't have material to help us teach it." and we knew that proprietary vendors had the material to teach it, and and they had the special licenses, and so it takes a while though once you produce a book in that to feed that need before people first realize it and realize they have a need, and then get on board with learning the book and integrating it into their curriculum. And then it's 5 years down the line before 100 students have gone through this course and actually bring that knowledge to their workplace. And who knows, in a lot of those entry-level workplaces, they won't have a lot of say in what tools they're using. So at home, they can build their own skills. And then when they build their own company or become more senior in their roles, then they can influence the way things go. Do you have any examples, stories about how you've seen like departments, whether they're like government departments you've worked in or other consulting agencies and stuff, where they've have made a transition from proprietary to open source and had to kind of like lick their wounds after?
I haven't seen it happen, at least within the federal government in the United States. There's pretty much a what's the word? Monopoly, I guess you'd say, through long-term contracts and licensing, and so it's mandated to use that throughout the organization. So when you have a government agency with 20,000 people or 50,000 people or whatever, that's the software you use. That's the software that's approved and been vetted and all that. That's very difficult for them to transition, even though they might want to. Now, I know there is a lot of use of QGIS within the federal government, but it's probably in addition to the officially licensed version of proprietary software, and I don't have any solid information on that. I do know it's been used by a lot of other agencies, though. I mean, it's not a technical thing to transition.
Yeah.
It's more the political side or the money side or the long-term licensing side of things that would prohibit someone from transitioning completely.
I get that.
But when you're dealing with legacy systems too, if you've got a system that operates your business as an agency or an organization, and you've built that over the years, to replace that with open source, that's a major project. And that's, open source is free, but that transition won't be. It's going to be costly in terms of consultants or just in-house time to do a conversion and test it and deploy it.
Yeah, we hear that mantra stated all the time, right? Open source isn't free. Like, yeah, we actually understand what all this means. You don't have to educate us on it later, but or to warn us off of it, to stick with you, But so this live stream, just to kind of come back around, and I don't want to really take more than an hour here, so we'll come back to the kind of pivotal question. Was why did we feel like there was a need to start Locate Press? I've started too many things. I can't remember them all. Why did we feel the need to start Locate Press? Basically 10 years ago. And I shared some of the kind of market-related factors, some of the partnership factors about working with authors in a more meaningful way. But ultimately, and this does relate actually to OSGeo. That's why I've got it on my screen here. I was going to say something about it. For those of you that don't know, I was executive director for OSGeo, or the Open Source Geospatial Foundation, for 5 years after helping found it in 2006-ish. And we realized even before that, 2004, I was pitching the idea that we should have a foundation for MapServer alone. And I was thinking kind of small, but that really didn't go anywhere until later when Dave McAleaga hooked me up with the Autodesk, and they really put some money behind this idea and went, wow, we could really do something with this. And so OSGeo was sponsored and funded during that time. But the idea that companies did not know about open source GIS options. My peers didn't know. My IT department barely touched open source software at the time. Anyway, the school didn't know. Researchers might have known because they've been using, RStats or whatever was available. I don't even know. So basically, it came down to me, back with my marketing hat or business hat on. It came back down to a marketing and promotion challenge. How do we raise the bar, help people understand what's going on in the marketplace? Oh yeah, I'll put our picture up here. What's going on in the marketplace that they should be aware of. You'd hear about it at little GIS user groups, about open source projects they'd use, and we'd be at those user groups. I don't know if others are like this, but I was at these user group meetings falling asleep because it was about software I didn't really care about. And then somebody would share, oh, they used this script to do this and this, and I'd be like, wait, what? Let's talk. And you'd like corner people who are like, look like they might be interested in open source. And he kind of developed a sense for finding those people in a crowd and stalking them until they shared their secret scripts with you. So that's what it really started. OSGeo was to help raise that awareness and kind of the group dynamic and support one another and help further these things. And Locate Press really spun out of that same idea to say, look, that people need stuff. How can we make this happen without relying on, say, a nonprofit model that won't have necessarily sufficient funding going forward and things like that? You didn't want to necessarily group it into the publishing of books into the core part of the nonprofit. So spinning it out as a consulting kind of, almost a consulting training company, right? Like I don't lead training courses. I don't think you did you do much training as a contractor on QGIS? Like there's other companies that did that from early on, right?
I had intentions, but I never really did it.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of training here and there and workshops at Phosphor-G and things like that, but it wasn't the core part of my job. And to be honest, it's not my core strength either. But communicating technical concepts to a less technical audience or to a sophisticated audience is definitely something that was interesting to me. So I'm not a developer so much as a power user. And those are the kinds of people who write books for us. People who really know the stuff, maybe developers, but usually power users who are running their own consulting company, or they're working with a nonprofit, or they have expertise within their own company, and we get it into book form for them. So we needed to have this company as one more way of helping market and raise awareness of the product, the open source GIS product. You see how too many years of business school now in my head. Everything's a product, everything's a market. But we do know that actually it's at the software development level. This is all community-driven development. And those are people that we're helping support while everybody else is seeing some of these topics for the first time in a book as we market these books. Gary, anything else you would say about the impetus behind starting the company or even growing the company over like the last 10 years? Like why would you do this dang fool venture? It's a lot of work.
Well, crazy, I guess, but we were able to capture some of the leading names in the open source software world in terms of users, and have them authored some of the books. And so that I thought that was really a good thing that happened. And it's good to have people that are on the ground and know their stuff writing the books for you. But everybody has something they can contribute. I mean, you don't have to be a worldwide lecturer to be able to write a book on any of those topics. But it's I think it was fortuitous that we had some of the people that we did early on that kind of got recognition that, hey, there's another place to go to get
Mm-hmm.
books that address the things that I'm interested in if you're an open source GIS or software user. I mean, there are a lot of people that didn't even know Locate Press existed. Even in the last year or so, somebody came out and said, "I didn't even know that these books were out
Yeah.
there." So
Yeah.
that's my fault as being a poor marketer. I'm not much of a marketer. I'm more of the put my head down and grind through things, and Tyler's a marketer. So I did a poor job of making sure everybody in the world knew about Locate Press, but he's going to address
You
it.
sure put your head down and 10x to the company. So that's pretty impressive. Super impressive. That does bring up a good question, talking about expertise in the field and stuff. The idea that there are other domains that we haven't written about, and we do have things kind of lined up now. I'm saying we, I mean me, and I mean Locate Press. Now, I'm not trying to rope Gary into being responsible for these other decisions. But the other books, oh, you saw it on one of these slides I had. The other kinds of books that we're bringing in and have authors for. You can see in the top right here on this slide that just says the 2022-2023 works in progress, GMAP and Earth Engine by Qiusheng Wu, and Journey to Open Source GIS, or How to Succeed as a GIS Rebel by Mark Seibel is just out. I'll talk about that in a second. Using R as a GIS, Nick was in the chat up until a few minutes ago. Python geovisualization, geoanalytics with Python, and more are in the works. Including people that you'll recognize. So once we are ready to kind of talk more about those, we'll bring them out. But we basically have another 10 titles or so, or including translations in the works to come out this year. But almost none of them will say QGIS in the title, and I'm not sure that that's okay, Gary.
Well, there's other things to talk about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it. So some people maybe think that Locate Press only publishes QGIS books. I don't know. Maybe the company was biased early on. It's hard to say. But since that time, we've in the last year, we've really recruited a lot more authors, really focused on those experts that we can pull in who can share their stories. Let me just grab this other slide here. And this was more of the closing thoughts for people to consider. What could you write about? What's needed to support GIS professionals more? What's the best way to engage people to help them learn these things? And these are questions that I just encourage every professional or researcher or professor to consider and be in touch with us. You can email me at just tyler@locatepress.com, and I'd love to hear your ideas. But there are these other domains of GIS that we don't really touch on. We have the hydrology or hydrological applications book. I'd love to see a forestry book, a mining book, geology, healthcare, transportation. Those other domains where we get the technology applied to solve specific problems for those industries. Those will be very important types of books going forward, because they'll become like the go-to text for certain kinds of companies and certain kinds of education. Whereas up till now, we kind of more just focused on the technology itself. We want to actually focus on the application of the technology. I see Mark's actually in the chat as well. So he's our newest author. This is his book on the screen here. And I think, Gary, at this point, we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much for your time. I have one final slide I'll go over here once we say goodbye, but I appreciate your time, and
Sure.
I'm sure everybody will enjoy this looking back now that I solved my echo problem, just to be clear, my echo problem. And any final things you want to say about company, industry, anything I forgot? No blatant lies.
Keep on writing, keep on publishing.
Yeah, so I summed up, last year was recruitment year. And now this year is execution on delivering new books for all those fans out there. So I'll I'll talk a little bit about Mark's book now, but I'm gonna switch off your camera and just go to something else. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon. Oh yeah, my chat window didn't quite work out the way I hoped on this one. I'll delete that one. And one sec. I've really learned a lot with this experience, so I appreciate everybody's patience on this. So this was our first session, and it's really a beta session. So if you're interested, we've maybe had 5 to 7 people watching, at least with the stat I have on my screen. That might be just YouTube. I don't know who is watching on other platforms. Well, we've tried to kind of share the stuff on other platforms, including Twitch and Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I don't know how well those live streams will turn out, but we will have this archived on YouTube at least. Echoing included early on. My apologies for that. Next session that we're planning, I'm hoping I'll twist Mark's arm into doing it next week, is how to be a GIS rebel, or really digging into his journey into using open source GIS. I talked about different domains and different focuses for our books, aside from just technology. And this book really is about the journey as an individual, as a professional, as a student, going through learning the de facto tooling as part of his education, and then realizing it wasn't enough, and then growing in knowledge and awareness of what's available, and then also building your own toolkits to solve real world problems in the organization that the organizations he's worked in. So he's a 25-year GIS master. So in this book, we dive into a variety of items. Let me pull up. Oh, never mind. Into a variety of explanations of GIS early on. This is a preview version of the book. It's the first 50 pages. It's the first 2 chapters that talks about what is GIS in the first place. So it's a good primer for that. We haven't really had kind of this level of less technical conversation before. And then it dives into what's open source GIS and how does it kind of uniquely positioned in this ecosystem of solutions and products and even philosophies. So this book will probably stir the pot a little bit in terms of conversations that we've had with around the industry, and we hope to you'll get the very low priced preview for $5, and also look forward to the full book, which will be several times larger later this year. But it dives into even more detail about how it's basically talking about what many of us learned over 20 years, and which students and early professionals could benefit from knowing before they get too far down the track and get forced into a certain paradigm. Anyway, it sounds very philosophical, but it's an easy read and very easy to understand. So we'll try to get Mark on the show for a chat, but share in the chat more about what you'd like to see, what you'd find compelling and interesting. I know there's lots of podcasts, lots of videos that they're highlighting GIS people and things like that. This is purely coming from a Locate Press book, education, marketing, outreach angle, to be unique and just talk about what we know. What would you like to hear? More about the inside baseball of running a publishing company? I mean, I don't know if anybody cares about that, but happy to talk about it. In fact, I could talk way too long about it. Do you want to know how to write a book for us? Do you have any other questions I can answer? And what other streaming platforms do you use or find helpful? I know there's always usually some open source or less Silicon Valley corporate targeted streaming services out there. Which ones do you use? Email me, tyler@locatepress.com, or subscribe to our mailing list. You'll see the link here, locatepress.com/subscribe. And I mail those reminders out before the show. And every time we have a sale, it goes there first. So get on the mailing list. And we also are, we share exclusive discounts on that mailing list. So subscribe, we'll get you those exclusive discounts. For example, we might offer a 20% discount in a sale. Well, we might offer a 30% discount to subscribers. So it's usually very significant that you get on there, and there's no cost, and it's very low volume, maybe once a month at the most. One of the questions came in, how are you planning to do the translations? This maybe is a bit more of an after show here, so keep the questions coming. I'll answer them right now. But I could go into a whole explanation of that, how we do the translations. We manage in the back end. All of this, our books are code repositories in a GitLab repository that we host. And we write everything in restructured text. So when we do a translation, we actually just duplicate their code repository. The translator jumps in and basically can change those source text files. And we can actually produce a product relatively quickly without a lot of expertise required from the author in terms of publishing platform and stuff like that. Well, I appreciate you sticking around this long, and apologies for some of the hiccups early on. Let me just go through the questions one more time here, see if there's anything anyone had to say that I should have brought up. Etsy talks about some challenges in El Salvador and teaching in the university there, trying to get to Phosphor-G technology in the door. If you're academic or you're struggling with academics who aren't teaching you the right things or teaching you more things, open things, send them my way. We do give out desk review copies to academics as much as I can. Finding the ones that really need it are often a challenge. Those who are developing courses and need a course text and they need a discount text to get started for their students, contact me and let me know. We do site licensing for our PDFs, and we do bulk discounts for print books of 5 or more. I should say we actually have enabled a new capability in our store. Where is that now? I want to bring Gary back in here by mistake. But we actually have a capability, a new store that we're starting, and it's kind of been soft launched. Okay, come on. It's at store.locatepress.com. This allows you to buy print books directly from us without having to use Amazon. All of our print fulfillment, more or less, has been through Amazon. They have the relationship with the printing company we work with, so they do print on demand. They take the order from Amazon, ship it to you. These prices aren't usually all competitive. The prices are not competitive depending on where you are. So we wanted another option where your book can actually be printed with another printing network that we work with. So this company has hundreds of printers around the world that are part of their network. So you can get a book printed more locally or regionally and shipped to you faster with this new arrangement. So try it out and let me know how it works for you. Do I have a Mastodon account? No. Good question. I have to look into even really what that would entail doing. So I see a lot of people doing that, but frankly, I've been heads down editing since people have started talking more about that. But do they do streaming on there? I don't know. I'm going to wrap it up here, but again, thanks a lot. Keep an eye out for Mark's new book, which is now available as a PDF purchase online. That's what we usually do. Do a PDF preview of a couple chapters, and then we'll do a PDF and print thing later on as things go on. Thank you, and probably try to do one of these a week if I can get the topics lined up and the technology ironed out. And you were the beta tester, and I appreciate your time today. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you